Well, good morning. And as usual, remember, this is the day the Lord's made. I'll rejoice and be glad in it, and so should you. Well, I must apologize for not having a video clip online with our teaching for the last couple of weeks. The 11th of October, we traveled back to Curtis, where I officiated a wedding for Curtis Burns and Maddie Burton. That took up much of my time that week. Then we attended services with our special friends there at Curtis Baptist Church on Sunday. And after the services, we went back to Marquette, and where we had most everything loaded, and we finished up loading that Monday morning. Then we left for our trip out west Monday afternoon and arrived at our destination here at my son's on Friday the 17th in the afternoon. We're now, like I say, at our son's here in southwest Colorado, just north of Cortez. Jane and I are both very tired from the trip and the events of the last few months. We aren't settled in anywhere yet, but are working on it. I must tell you about our best friend for over 65 years. Matter of fact, our kids don't realize that he's not blood kin. They call him Uncle Jerry, and his kids call me Uncle Ray, and my wife Jane, as Aunt Jane. And it's a wonderful relationship. His name, by the way, is Jerry Truitt. Many of you have met him. And he came all the way from East Texas up to Michigan, pulling an enclosed car hauler trailer that I'd purchased. He then helped us load that trailer with our little Corvair convertible and a lot of boxes and totes with all our stuff in them. The Corvair's completely loaded, the trunk's loaded, the seats are loaded, everything, and then all the other room around it is just packed with stuff. And he pulled it all the way here to southwest corner of Colorado. Then he headed back to Texas. By the way, I pulled another car hauler trailer with our little Buick on it, and some other totes tied down. But anyway, Jerry headed back home to Texas, and I love the man dearly. He's such a wonderful friend. By the way, that entire loop there, from Texas to Michigan to Colorado and back to Texas, would be about a little over 5,200 miles when he got home. Now, folks, that's what you call a true friend. We're told in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 24, that a man who has friends must show himself to be friendly. And it doesn't stop right there. It says, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And of course, that actually is talking about the Lord. But Jerry is that kind of friend to me. He was always closer to me than my blood brother. Now, today I'm not going to do any teaching on the Gospel of John. Instead, I wish to share with you some teaching that, after having a discussion with Jane, I found that many folks are confused when it comes to the chronological order of the Bible. She shared with me that she had problems keeping it all straight. Therefore, if you've ever had some problems, this is for you. Now, there are many chronological Bibles on the market today, and I'm not against those, and I'm not for them either. I think they're good tools, just like anything else. However, once a person grasps the fact, let me back up. I've shared this with many people, and I'd see a light bulb go off in their head because they finally get it, okay? And once you grasp the fact that the Bible is not one book, but it's more like the old Reader's Digest, formerly published, a volume with 3 or more books in it. You know what I'm talking about? Well, the Bible contains more than one book. The Bible is a volume that contains 66 books. They're not set in any particular order of printing, like first or last, or chronological order, but are independent books. That is, they stand alone. They're standalone books. For instance, the book of Job is the oldest or the first written book of the Bible, and it was written by Job, who lived many centuries before Moses, who wrote the book of Genesis, which is the beginning. So each of the 66 books is telling a story or historical event or possibly songs or poetry. The books are usually grouped by subject detail rather than date or happening or the date of the writing. As you know, the Bible is divided into 2 major parts: Old Testament, which contains 39 books, and the New Testament, which contains 27 books. Both Old and New Testament are further broken down into subject-based sections. Okay? The Old Testament includes the law, history, poetry, and prophecy, while the New Testament contains the Gospels, that's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, history, that's Acts, epistles, that's all the letters, and prophecy, which is the book of Revelation. Now, in the Old Testament, the law, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, is called the Pentateuch, or for the Hebrew people or the Jewish people, it's Torah. It's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Then followed the Pentateuch is history books. The books like Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd King, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. And then comes the poetry writings, which also include songs. A lot of people don't understand that the Psalms were not only songs, but it was also poetry, and sometimes they would set the poetry to music. But anyway, in these writings are writings such as Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, and so on. And finally, there's the prophecy. The prophetic books divided into 2 sections: the major prophets, which is Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, and the minor prophets, Hosea, Joel, Amos, and so on. Those found in the latter part of the Old Testament, right before you get to the New Testament. Now, I'm talking about the Christian Bible, by the way. Now, in New Testament, you have the Gospels, the 4 books that detail the life and teaching of Jesus. That's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The book of Acts is the history, which chronicles the early church. And then comes the epistles, or the letters. Letters written to the churches and individuals, divided into the Pauline epistles, which those are the letters that Paul wrote, usually and most often to a church, but every now and then to an individual. They're like Romans and 1st, 2nd Corinthians and the general epistles and like that, like Hebrews and James and Peter And finally comes the prophecy, the book of Revelation, which contains prophecies about the end times, which, by the way, I think we're very close to. Now, a final thought that may help you in another area, and it won't cost you anything, just a few minutes of your time. There are 4 Gospels, all telling the same historical account of the life of Jesus, the Messiah, the promised one. Yet each book is a little different. I've had many people ask me, shouldn't they be all the same? If they're telling the same story, shouldn't they all be the same? My answer is very simple. If that were the case, we wouldn't need all 4. We'd only need 1. But there's a reason why we have 4 Gospels. And the reason for the 4 narratives is that each one is told from a different point of view or a different perspective. It's much like getting witness statements of a traffic accident which happened at an intersection. The person on the northeast corner tells how a red car coming from their left hit the green car that was coming from the right. However, the witness on the southwest corner would say that the red car was coming from their right, hit the green car coming from their left. Now, both are accurate statements of this accident with different descriptions. Why? They have different points of view. One was standing on the northeast corner and one was standing on the southwest corner. But it's the same accident. Now, the reason for the 4 Gospels is that they show the 4 different stations or positions of Jesus' ministry. Matthew, you remember what Matthew was before he became a follower of Christ? He was a tax collector for the king. His relationship was to the king. And he gives us the point of view of Jesus as king. And he is. Now, Mark is the one over later on in the epistles where Paul calls him John Mark. And he says, he's of no value to me, and all this stuff, because he left when they went on their first missionary journey. He abandoned them. Well, Mark was he wasn't ready for all this at that time. He was young. He was a poor little rich kid. He had been pampered, and his writing shows us the view of Jesus as a servant, because poor little rich kids had servants to do stuff for them. And Jesus was a servant. Luke was a physician or a doctor. And so when you read through his gospel, it gives us a glimpse of Jesus' humanity. By the way, he was 100% human, but he was 100% God too. And finally, John, who lived the longest, had the most personal relationship with Jesus. The Bible describes him as the one whom Jesus loved, and who wrote the book of Revelation. This, through his eyes, we see Jesus is 100% God, and he is. So you see, that's the reason there's 4 different Gospels, and they're written by 4 different individuals. By the way, John also wrote not only the book of Revelation, but 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and he also wrote the Gospel of John. I hope this helps. And if you would like a copy of this teaching, just send me an email, and I will email it back to you. All of my information is going to follow. By the way, my email address now is ray.ubcs. That's umbrella, Bravo, Charlie, and Sam. UBCS. ray.ubcs@gmail.com. And as you look at the information at the end of this, be sure to take note that everything has changed except my name. Well, until next time, God bless. Amen. Have a wonderful day.